my dear students, welcome back to another video lecture. Today we'll be learning the topic demographic profile, occupational structure, infrastructure, and the conclusion of this chapter, first chapter, that is Indian economy on the eve of independence. So let us quickly go to the first topic, demographic profile. So when I talk about demographic profile, it means the structure of India's population during the time of British colonial rule or under the colonial rule. So the British first took our population census in the year 1881. So this was the year where we took our first population census. So starting from this year, every 10 years, we Indian census for the population was taken every after 10 years. So earlier, before 1921, India, we had a first demographic transition. It means that we neither had a high population nor a low population. We were having a smooth population rate till 1921. That means the first demographic transition. But after 1921, we India had a second transition in demographic profile. That means that after 1921, our population started to rise at an alarming rate. That is why 1921 is also called the year of Great Divide. So let us learn again the various social development indicators under the demographic profile. So during the colonial rule, during the British colonial rule, we had an overall literacy rate which is less than 16%. This indicates that our social and economic, we had a social and economic backward because our literacy rate was very low. The second thing that we'll be seeing here is the life expectancy. The life expectancy rate is also as low as 44 years, which at present we all know that our life expectancy is 68 years. But during the British colonial rule, our life expectancy, Indian life expectancy, was only 44 years. So the third thing under the various social development indicators here is the female literacy rate. The female literacy rate during the British colonial rule is also negligibly low, which is only 7%. That means here we can see that there was no opportunity given to the women in terms of education, health, and so on and so forth. The fourth one under the social development indicator is infant mortality rate. So when I talk about infant mortality rate, it means those children, those infants who die before the age of 1 year of age. So infant mortality rate was 218 per thousand. That means out of 1,000 babies or infants, 200 babies were dying before the age of 1 year. However, today at present, our infant mortality rate was 44 per thousand, which means out of 1,000, only 44 babies or infants are dying. So this was the condition of our infant mortality rate. So this shows that we had a lack of healthcare facilities or means of lack of knowledge or healthcare facilities or nutritional status. So not only that, we had an extensive poverty during the British colonial rule, and water and airborne diseases were also quite high and quite huge. So these were some of the demographic condition, population condition during the British colonial rule. The second topic that we will be learning here is the occupational structure. When I talk about the occupational structure, it means the distribution of working person in different sectors, that is in primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. So during the time of British colonial government, the agriculture was the principal source of occupation for most of the people. Most of the people, about 70 to 75% of our country's population was dependent directly or indirectly from the agriculture. So this was the condition of the occupational structure under the British colonial rule. Second thing is in manufacturing sector, that is in secondary sector, only 10% of the working population was engaged in manufacturing sector. This shows that we had a backwardness in the Indian industry at the time of independence. Now the fourth one is 17% of our working population was in service sector. So for some of you who don't know the service sectors are those sectors which directly or indirectly help the agriculture, the primary sector, or the manufacturing sector. They don't produce any goods, but they give services. For example, like transportation, banking facilities, and all other media. All comes under the service sector. So only 17% of our working populations were engaged in service sector. So when we look at on all these points, we can see that there was an unbalanced growth in all the three sectors. So this was the condition of our occupational structure at the time of the independence, that is during the British colonial government. The topic that we'll be learning here is infrastructure. So infrastructure means basic amenities like railway, ports, water, transport, roads. All this comes under infrastructure. So during the British colonial government, basic infrastructures like railway, ports, telecom services, transport, water, roads did develop, but this development was not to provide basic amenities to the people. The real motive behind introduction of this infrastructure was to take away our raw materials to their country. So one of the main important contribution that was made by the British is the introduction of railways in the year 1980. So introduction of railway in the year 1950s was regarded as one of the most important contribution made by the British colonial government to India. So let us learn here, let us focus more about some of the impact where the impacts of railways, introduction of railways in India. So the first impact that the British introduced railway in India was it enables people to undertake a long distance travel. So which means that after the introduction of the railway, people were able to undertake a long distance travel, which ultimately breaks our geographical and cultural barrier. The second thing is it helps integrating our nation. The third is it fosters commercialization of agriculture and ultimately made farmers a self-sufficiency. The fourth one is our volumes of India's trade undoubtedly expanded after the introduction of railway. And the last impact is it provides employment opportunities to the people. So these were some of the various impacts of the introduction of railway in India in the year 1850. So by the time India won its independence, the impact of the 2-century-long British colonial rule was already showing in all aspects of our Indian economy, such as in the field of agriculture, industries, demography, occupation, infrastructure. They were already impacting in all our Indian economy. However, this impact was not going well. Our agriculture sector was declining. We had a low productivity. The industrial sector was also crying for modernization, diversification. Infrastructure was not meant for the people, for the benefits of the people, but mostly for taking away our raw materials to their home country. And lastly, our occupation structure was also not very pleasing. So all these, overall, we can see that during the British colonial rule, our Indian economy did not progress much. So this was the condition of our Indian economy on the eve of the independence. So that's all for this chapter. In the next video, we'll be learning the second chapter. Thank you. Stay safe and stay healthy.